Hi, I'm Jack Draper. Shout out to QualityShot Tennis.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Really exciting start to the clay court season with our Roland Garros Power Rankings for 2023. It's our first edition, so don't read into it too much, of course. There has been some clay court tennis played, but the real clay court swing is to come very, very soon. Before we get into it, though, remember to that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and also do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. On top of that, thank you to all our members. It really is appreciated, your support. And on top of that, over 80% of you are still not subscribed. Do hit that subscribe button. Really does help us out if you don't mind. And it just means you get alerted to any new content coming out as well. Okay, let's break this down then, and let's talk about how this works. So if you've watched my videos in the past from last year, you will know how I do my power rankings. But if you haven't watched my power rankings before, then this is a quick breakdown and explainer as to how I do my power rankings, as there's a few different ways of doing it. So for me, I base my power rankings based on a few factors. The first and most important factor is current form. Now, mainly current form on surface, but given that, of course, the clay court swing hasn't started, there's only been a few minor clay court tournaments just before the Sunshine Double. We're not going to take into account, obviously, say Miami or Indian Wells as much as we will when Monte Carlo comes, or Rome, or Madrid, for example. But at the moment, we'll take it into consideration. But mainly current form is my biggest factor. This is more like a form guide than anything I would say in my power rankings. But we do also take into consideration past results. Not just past results generally, but past results at this Grand Slam at Roland Garros. And if they haven't played much at the tournament, then how does their game translate onto the surface as well? And that's kind of that's the smallest factor for me. That's a factor that I'm not really going to put as much emphasis on, because that's more of a little bit of an assumption and a guessing game more than anything, in all honesty. So let's get into it then. So who do I pick as my number one? It is the biggest question, because there's been some really informed players this year, of course. We have people like Djokovic, who has not played much tennis, but he won the Australian Open. He made the semi-finals of Dubai as well. The only two tournaments he's played this year. He played in Adelaide as well, beat Korda before the Australian Open. So, two titles out of the three he's played so far, none on the clay. Then you can talk about someone like Medvedev, who, is an interesting one, because you wouldn't, and that's why I say take this first week with a pinch of salt. You won't pick him probably in your top 5 favorites to win the French Open or Roland Garros, but his form has been phenomenal. He made the 4th round of Roland Garros last year, but his form recently, after winning Miami, making the final of Indian Wells, winning Dubai, winning Qatar, winning Rotterdam, I mean, he's won 4 out of the last 5 tournaments he's played in and made 5 straight finals, which is incredible, right? So he's the most informed player, no doubt, in terms of current form, you would say. And then you've got someone like Alcaraz, who actually started off his season on the clay. He missed the Australian Open, and then he won Argentina, or the Argentina Open, even the 250, beating Nori in the final on clay. Played the Rio Open, where he was the defending champion. He lost in 3 sets, but he was injured, to be fair, to Cam Nori. So reverse result there. And then the Mexican Open, he didn't play it. He pulled out due to injury. Won Indian Wells, and lost in Miami to Yannick Sinner in the semi-finals. So Indian Wells and Miami aren't the best yardsticks, of course, for the clay court swing, but what they do give you is a little bit of an indicator into who's going to play the slow conditions better, because they are slow hard court. So that's at least something that you can compare when talking about the surfaces, maybe the speed of the surface more than anything. Then if we talk about the reigning champion and 14-time Grand Slam winner at Roland Garros anyway, and 22 slams in total, of course, Rafael Nadal. He has only played 1 tournament and lost in the second round to McDonald at the Australian Open tournament in straight sets. Hasn't been seen, since. So he's going to be back in the clay court swing. When, we're not sure. Some people speculate it's going to be Monte Carlo. Some saying it's going to be later, but we'll see where he comes about. So I've talked about a few players and given you guys a bit of an indicator as to what we're going to be doing. So let's just start off with number one. So I think, and again, these rankings are going to change a lot over the course of the next few weeks. And as we approach Roland Garros, I'm pretty sure the list will look completely different. Positions would have been swapped when we finally do our concluding power rankings just before Roland Garros. So let's do number one then. Number one has to be Daniel Medvedev for me. I think it's impossible to pick anyone else. He's the most informed player right now. You might argue that, okay, well, what about Djokovic? Because he's won 2 out of the 3 tournaments. He's going to be up there, but he can't be number one. And it's not his fault. He hasn't been able to play Indian Wells or Miami. It's definitely not his fault. And he's won Roland Garros in the past before, of course, which I think gives him some more brownie points. But I think if we're basing these rankings more on form than anything, then it has to be Daniel Medvedev. And the big positive for the Russian is that these are slow conditions that he's had success on. The first 3 tournaments he won were all indoors or outdoor conditions that were pretty quick. So you say, okay, well, that's expected. He loves playing on fast courts. He loves the hard courts generally. Indian Wells made the final and he lost to Alcaraz. Alcaraz, made him look pretty ordinary, but the fact that he even made the final, I thought, was a really big achievement because that's the slow of the 2 tournaments as well. And then at Miami, it's still a pretty slow court. Made the final 1 as well. Very, very impressive victory of Jannik Sinner there in straight sets, extended his head-to-head lead against Sinner to 6-love or 6-0. So I think we've got to go with him. And, a lot of people don't realize, yes, clay is not his favorite surface. It's arguably his worst surface or his least favorite surface, but he has made a quarterfinal at Roland Garros, and it wasn't too long ago. It was 2 years ago. He lost to Stefanos Tsitsipas in that quarterfinal, and last year he made the 4th round. He lost to Marin Cilic, which, Cilic played some really good tennis. I think he made the semi-finals in the end last year as well. So there's no real shame in losing to Cilic, and then also Tsitsipas, especially the year before, who went on to make the final, of course, and was 2 sets to love up against Djokovic in that final. So, yeah, Medvedev number one, I think, undoubtedly at the moment. I very much doubt that he's going to stay at number one in a week, in 2 weeks or 3 weeks' time. But for now, he takes the number one spot. So number two, who gets number two? Well, there's a few people that are in contention for this. So Novak Djokovic is one that we were discussing, but the issue with him is just the bulk of work, and it's very hard to tell exactly what he's going to be like going into Monte Carlo. I imagine he's just going to come in as these goats tend to do, and he will just ease his way into it with match practice, and he's played so many tournaments over so many years that he'll just use his experience, and then he will just stomp over the competition when he really needs to and wants to, and he'll really up his level when needed. But, every great player needs to have some sort of good preparation before a tournament, of course, and he'll think the same about Roland Garros, no doubt, as well. So he's in contention. I think we have to talk about Alcaraz. Alcaraz made, he won a tournament on the clay, made a final of another on the clay in that very, very short period before the Sunshine Double. Then he won Indian Wells, which is the slow of the 2 Sunshine Double tournaments, which is the most similar to clay than probably any other hardcore tournament. And then in Miami, he lost to Jannik Sinner in the semi-final in 3 sets in an incredible encounter. So he's definitely in the reckoning as well. And then do we talk about someone like Jannik Sinner? He made the final of Miami. He lost in the semi-finals to Alcaraz and Indian Wells. And, he's a very good clay court player himself. Won Umag last year, beat Alcaraz. Alcaraz, to be fair as well, I forgot to mention, of course, made the 4th round last year, losing to Alexander Zverev, which, he would have been disappointed by because he went into that the favorite, even. despite being so young, but it's because he won Madrid, beating Nadal, Djokovic, and Zverev in back-to-back-to-back days, which is incredible. And sorry, he lost in the quarterfinals, of course, to Alexander Zverev in 4 sets after beating Khachanov and Korda. So I think we have to look at this because he won Barcelona last year as well, after being Tsitsipas, Dimona, Carina Busta, Monte Carlo. He lost to Korda in 3 sets, fine, but that was the first clay court tournament or clay court Masters, and after that he cleaned up. So I think we have to put Alcaraz up there because he lost in the German Open to Musetti in the final, another clay court tournament. Croatia Open lost to Sinner, Umag, again a clay court tournament though. So he's going deep, making finals, winning clay court tournaments on a regular basis throughout the majority of the year. So I think we have to give Alcaraz number 2, just because he's actually played clay court tournaments this year, which not a lot of players have done so. And that's why we'll also probably be talking about Cam Norrie as well, because they've got a little bit of an advantage in this first week anyway of Power Rankings, because they do have the advantage of, they have the advantage of playing clay court tournaments before the actual Masters swing on the red stuff. So Alcaraz at number 2, I think is probably fair. It's probably fair enough, I think. Now this is where it gets a bit tricky, a bit interesting. Novak Djokovic is one that we have to talk about, and I think we have to put him at number 3. And the reason why I say that is, despite not playing any clay court tournaments this year, and also not playing the Sunshine Double, I think it's impossible to look away from Djokovic. Djokovic, has won Roland Garros before. Yes, he lost in the quarterfinals to Nadal last year, but then he also, has beaten him in the past as well. So he beat him in 2021 in the semi-finals, and then went on to win it in 2021. He hasn't won it once. What we're talking about, he's won it twice. He won it in 2021, won it in 2015 as well. So, we can't sit here and say that Djokovic can't be up there. He's won it twice, quite recently as well. And on top of also being incredible on the clay, his record is phenomenal. He's won Rome so many times. He's won all of the Masters 1000 tournaments, not just on hard court and hard court even, but also the clay court tournaments as well. And he is incredibly good on that surface. So I think we have to put him at number 3. Because you could argue that this year he could be more dangerous than Nadal on the clay, and he could also be the favourite. He's also got great form after winning Australian Open and Adelaide before that, and then also, making the semi-finals of that Dubai Championships. Lost to Medvedev, who played some really good tennis, fine. Hasn't played since, but he'll be hungry coming back, no doubt. So Djokovic at 3 for me. Number 4, this is where it starts to get interesting, because it's really a pick-em between who do you pick. There's some people like Sinner, as I said. I mentioned you have to talk about him. You have to talk about, Nadal. Do we even put him in there? He's been injured. I guess maybe we'll put him in there. We'll have to talk about that in a second. You can talk about other players that have had some decent results. I mean, looking at Andrei Rublev, hasn't looked great. They made the final of Dubai, but that's not a very good yardstick, honestly. In Australia, made the quarterfinals, lost to Djokovic as well. I think we have to put Cam Norrie at 4, in all honesty. And I'll tell you why. Last year, yes, he only made the 3rd round of the French Open or Roland Garros. And yes, he lost in the 1st round of Miami. Indian Wells, though, he made the quarterfinals, which, again, as I said, it's more similar to the clay. Lost to TFO in a tight 2-setter, 6-4, 6-4. And then the Mexican Open, he didn't play, but Rio, of course, he won. Now, yes, Alcaraz had some sort of ailment, and yes, he was injured, but then he also made the final of Argentina as well. So he has a bit of practice on the clay. So I think that gives him a little bit of an advantage going into this power ranking anyway. Then it leads us on to the rest. Now, it is really the rest. There's not really a huge amount to discuss and really delve into in terms of the others, especially on clay courts anyway. Not a lot of people played those 2 tournaments before the Sunshine Double. Not a lot of the top players anyway. So it's really looking more at current form as the biggest thing, and also then their results at Roland Garros in the past as well. And you know, it's difficult. It's really, really difficult because I look at someone like a Zverev, who made the semi-finals. Obviously, had to retire against Nadal in the Roland Garros semis. He lost in Miami 6-love, 6-4 in the first round. Made the round of 16 in Indian Wells. Should have beaten, by the way, Daniel Medvedev. He lost 6-7, 7-6, 7-5. He should have come through that though. Played some good tennis. Made the semis of Dubai. Lost to Rublev. Round of 16 against Murray in Qatar. Lost to him. ATP Rotterdam lost to Grykspor round of 16. Australia lost to Michael Moe second round. Now he's on the way back from injury, but is he in the conversation? Maybe, maybe. I think we have to more look at someone like Yannick Sinner. I think we have to put him up there because he made the semi-finals of Indian Wells. He's also just won. He's also just made the final of Miami. And so I think we have to give it to him, don't we? I think it's impossible not to. Made the final of and won the Marseille Open as well earlier this year. Made the final of Rotterdam, lost to Daniel Medvedev. We've got to give it to Yannick Sinner. In fact, I'm going to put Yannick Sinner above Cam Norrie. I think that's probably fair, given a little bit of recency bias there probably as well. But I think we've got to go with Yannick Sinner at 4 and then Norrie at 5. Number 6 is where it starts to get even more interesting. Rublev, do we talk about him? He's had some decent results as of late. Felix Auger-Aliassime team has been very up and down. Lost in the second round to Cerundolo in Miami. Made the quarterfinals against Alcaraz in Indian Wells. Lost to him there. Dubai lost round of 16. Qatar lost semi-final. Rotterdam quarterfinal. Australia fourth round. Well, there's good enough results to put you at number 6. Not sure. Casper Ruud, second round loss at the Australian Open. Of course, made the final of. This is the weird one. He made the final of Roland Garros last year. He took a break after the Australian Open this year, and it hasn't paid dividends. Second round loss at Australia, as I said. Mexican Open lost to Taro Daniel. Second round, massive upset. Indian Wells lost to Christian Garin. Second round. Miami lost second round again to Van der Zandschulp, and he's playing in the Storo Open, which is a Portuguese tournament, ATP 250. We'll see how he gets on, but he's been in horrific form recently. Holger Rune is another one to talk about. Made this quarterfinals last year, of course, and also beat Tsitsipas on the way to the quarters. Lost to Rublev at the Australian Open in a very tight 5-setter in 4 sets. In 5 sets in the fourth round even. Semi-finals of Marseille, round of 16 ATP Rotterdam. Semi-finals of the Mexican Open. That's good. Beat Berrettini, beat Shelton, beat Borges. Positive. Lost to Diminar, fine. Lost to Stan Wawrinka, second round of Indian Wells. Lost to round of 16, Taylor Fritz. I think we've got to go Holger Rune, I think. Given the form as well that he's had recently, the fact that he made the quarterfinals last year, I think it puts him in a good position. And then actually talking of Taylor Fritz, I think we had to put Taylor Fritz in there. Miami Open made the quarterfinals, lost to Alcaraz, quarterfinals of Indian Wells, semi-finals of the Mexican Open, Delray Beach Open, final, Dallas Open, or final and won it, even. Dallas Open semi-final, Australian Open second round. I mean, that was a bit of a blip, let's say. And since then, has made some very, very solid results. So Fritz at 7, I think. Now it starts to get difficult as to who we pick. Now, round of 16 at the Miami Open, Tsitsipas lost to Khachanov. Round of 64, Indian Wells. Final of the Australian Open, though. Final of the Australian Open. Does that put him in good stead? I mean, he's had great results at the Australian Open, but he did have, shoulder surgery. So we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that his form recently has been a bit, afflicted by that shoulder. And he's not playing his best level and he's going to peak during the clay court swing. That's what, yeah, that's what I'm going to have to go with, I think. And so Tsitsipas at 8. Number 9, it's difficult. Now it gets very difficult because it's slim pickings. Honestly, it is to say the least, and in the most respectful way possible. I think Rublev has to be at 9, given that he's made a final recently. He made some quarterfinals, round of 16s. I think it's only fair to put him there at number 9. Now, number 10. I mean, you could put Casper Ruud in there, but in the final last year, but he's done nothing since. I just don't think we can put him in there. If it's a form guide, it's impossible to put him in there. You could put Khachanov, made semi-finals recently at Miami, round of 16 at Indian Wells, round of 32 though Dubai, semi-final at the Australian Open though as well. Felix, took Nadal to 5 in the round of 16 last year at Roland Garros. Miami Open second round, quarterfinal Indian Wells, round of 16 Dubai, semi-final Qatar, ATP Rotterdam quarterfinal as well. Fine, we'll go Felix. So we go Auger-Aliassime. I mean, not with much confidence, honestly, but that's our 10. I think, if we're talking about people that should be considered as well, people that, just outside the top 10, I think you'll talk about your Zverev. These are people that are going to be in contention, I imagine, at some point. Khachanov. Who else? Tommy Paul even's been in some good form as well recently. He's been in some decent form. These types of Lehechka even. See how he plays on the clay. Musetti's a very dangerous player on the clay. So these are people to look out for. But I think that 10 seems okay. So this is our final 10 for our first edition of the Power Rankings. We've gone number 1, Medvedev, number 2, Alcaraz, number 3, Djokovic, number 4, Sinner, number 5, Cam Norrie, number 6, Holger Rune, 7, Fritz, 8, Tsitsipas, 9, Rublev, 10, Auger-Aliassime. Now, take this with a pinch of salt. This is week 1, no clay court tournaments apart from, as I said, those 2 little tournaments that only a few people played in. So this is mainly based on hard court results at Miami and Indian Wells, and then, of course, factoring in as well some results like Djokovic winning it twice. Is obviously a big result, and he hasn't managed to play in Wells or Miami due to restrictions. So we had to then factor that in. So let me know your thoughts on whether you agree or disagree, and who would be in your power rankings. Who would be your number 1 through 10? Let me know in the comment section below. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and also do consider becoming a member on the channel on YouTube or contributing through podcast platforms as well to make sure that you guys get the best content possible. See you guys later.